Welcome, everybody, to the Hockey Think Tank podcast brought to you by the hockeythinktank.com, a website for all players, parents, and coaches to go to get a little bit of education and a little bit of inspiration regarding the greatest game on the planet. What an episode we have for you guys here today. We are bringing on JP Nerbun, who is an executive coach, a culture consultant, and he has just written a book that's coming out here in a couple weeks called The Sports Parent Solution. And what an episode this was with JP. Man, we just talk culture. And I got a lot better in this podcast episode, this conversation. It was awesome. But before we bring on JP, let's bring on another awesome guy, Mr. Big Stuff, Jeffrey J. Hulavecchio. Vex, what's going on today?
I forgot that A, I wrote that in the last 5 minutes, and then B, that if anybody watches this on YouTube, they will see that. I totally forgot
I'm
about
disappointed in you right now.
Why is that?
You're not supposed to go A and then B.
A, 2, and D.
There you
Tell
go.
us what movie that's from. That is coming up, very topical here.
I think Sean Muncy just lost a little bit of respect for you.
Yeah,
in doing that.
Anytime we text and there's a list, it's always A2D. It doesn't matter what it is. A, 2, and D. If you don't know what Christmas movie that's from, you're dead to us.
Okay. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, bro. Doing great. Really excited for this weekend. Actually, my buddy is a big time. He works in the ATF. He's a big time supporter of veterans, like wounded veterans, military veterans, cops, wounded cops, firefighters, first responders, and he's putting on a big gala this weekend in St. Louis. So I think the first time I wore a suit in the last, I don't know how many years was at my wedding, and I'm gonna wear one again this weekend. So
wow, are you gonna wear your wedding suit?
I'm wearing mine. That's the only suit I have, bro. So yeah. Well, oh man, I didn't tell you about this, and this is topical for those of you guys that know or that listen to the podcast. I'm sure you heard. It's probably been 2 years since we had Reed Lowe on. Year? I don't know.
No, it's been more than that.
Really?
It's probably been 3 years, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We should get the big guy on again. He's such a beauty. But anyways, at this other charity event that I was at 2 weeks ago, I show up and it says cocktail attire. All right, for everybody listening right now, I want you to imagine what cocktail attire is in your head. Okay, Toph, to you, what does cocktail attire mean?
Like very fancy.
Wow. See, I'm thinking, go to cocktails after work. Yeah, you relax a little. Everybody's having cocktails. So I'm thinking okay, maybe some jeans and some polos. Maybe some people got slacks on that are in the charity, whatever. Show up. It's a room of 200 people. Everybody's got dresses on.
Tuxes and stuff?
Not tuxes, but suits. Some had ties, some didn't. Sport coats, and I got on. I mean, I honestly, I probably would have wore this anyways, but I had on black jeans, a black T-shirt under a motorcycle leather jacket.
Oh my god!
I did my hair luckily, and I show up, and Reed Lowe is the guy who's the MC of the event all night.
Tell everybody who Reed Lowe is.
So, guys, Reed Lowe, if you haven't heard our podcast with him, go back and listen. He's an awesome guy, unbelievable. He was an NHL enforcer, aka meat, aka fighter. Okay, but he's one of the best guys in hockey. He's one of my boys, and his episode with us was amazing. He does something on Instagram now called Friday Night Fights with Losey. He picks a fight from his career every Friday and shows it, and it's actually awesome, dude. It's so cool. Every week
talk about it, or
talks about it every week. He's doing more and more and getting better and better at it and going more in depth, and how many times you don't get to see guys talking about their fights and I was grabbing here because of this, and I don't know, I just think it's really cool he's doing it, and really fun because he's such a good guy. So anyway, Losey is emceeing this event. I come in, I see him. He chirps me for not wearing a suit, whatever. I'm in the first chair closest to the stage. This room's 200 people. I'm literally I could touch him while he's emceeing almost. he's like, okay, so when I get going, because he does auctioning, he's the guy who does the like, how many, 100 here, 100 here, 200 here, 200. Can I get 200? Can I get 400? 400 back, 400. And he's really good at it. And he's
Really?
yeah, oh, dude, like look on his Instagram, check it out. And I think it's probably just at Reedlow, REEDLOW. So he's like, hey, I want to get the crowd going. I'm gonna chirp you a little bit, like to start. And I'm like, yeah, bro, I don't care. Go ahead, like get them going. Use me.
Oh
All right.
God.
So he's like, okay, now the fun part. And he takes off his jacket and throws it at my face, and it lands on my face, and everybody's laughing. And the first auction item up is a custom made suit. And he's just, so he throws a jacket. He kind of chirped me when he throws a jacket. Hilarious. First auction item up is a custom made suit. And he's like, well, to my friend who looks like he's at a Harley Davidson rally right now, if you don't buy this right now, you should leave the room or something. And everybody starts going nuts. So I have to bid on it. And so I'm, and I wound up losing at like 1,400. I stopped. I was like, yeah, dude. Yeah. And I was like, all right, like they got 1,500. All right, they can take it. And then so that person wins. And then they go, hold on. If you'll do it also, the guy who's making the custom suits will do two. And Losey's like, well, now you got to do it, Max. For a room of 200 people, puts me on the spot in front of 200 people for charity. So who never wears suits, and my goal was to never wear a suit again in my life other than my wedding.
Now you have to buy a $1,500 suit.
Now I got a $1,500 custom suit that I got to get made.
Oh my
he
God.
rinsed me, but it was so funny. So,
yeah, but you're doing it for veterans.
Yeah,
so
of course, dude.
Totally fine with that.
Yeah. But yeah, so a lot of charity stuff here in the last couple weeks, and it's love this time of year. It's the most wonderful time of the year. If you know what I'm saying.
It is. Although, yeah, it's really nice out. Like it went from like snowing on Halloween, like
snowed there, wow.
Snowstorm in Chicago.
Wow.
And so walking around with the kids, and now it's like really nice out. But yeah, this is the best time of year, man. Like fall. Somebody asked me this actually. I was reading to Paige's class last week, and the kids get to like ask you to her. Yeah, kid can't even read. And the kids like ask you all these questions and stuff. And one of the questions was, what was your favorite season? And I said, fall. Fall is my favorite season.
Wow, that's Kylie's too. Congrats.
What's yours?
I don't know. The one where I get to go to the gym.
You're an idiot. Anyway, let's get back to the podcast here. So this was a great conversation, man. Like JP and I, for everybody who's listens to us, know how much I love learning about culture. And this conversation with JP was probably the most insightful one that I've had in a long time. And we learned a lot. And there are some, especially for like the coaches that are listening to this, or the leaders in business or education or wherever, there are 100% going to be tangible things that you can use from this podcast to become a better leader in your domain, whatever that domain is. And so just really, really insightful, awesome conversation. Vex, I know you enjoyed it too. And I'm really looking forward to getting this into everybody's hands. This was awesome.
Yeah, and I love that like right away both you guys were like, okay, culture is not like a box to check. I don't know if I think you said that. And it was like, it's not just like we do this like culture activity one time at the very beginning of the season and our culture is good, we're all done, we're set. Like it's not how it works. It's a ever living, breathing, shifting, moving force that you must nurture and love, and like you got
to massage my little pet.
Yeah.
What movie?
Love it.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I got it.
Tommy Boy.
Yeah.
For everybody that doesn't know.
And I just think that that's so important for especially people who maybe like didn't grow up playing sports. Like I met some coaches. I just started with a a new hockey organization for me with Ripped Hockey is working with where Cody used to coach. Our cousin Cody, who's been on the podcast before, the Rockets. So I just started running and overseeing their training facility. And I met a couple of coaches there who never played the game of hockey. And I was like, man, he's like, I'm just trying to learn. And I was like, well, I got a podcast for you. And so, like, I think sometimes people who are at the higher levels forget that, there's parents, so many parents in this game that, if they learn these things, it's only going to help them for their players. It's only going to help their teams, whether they're a manager, a parent, a coach, whatever. And so I'm glad that you guys hammered home that point.
That's true. Culture is a living, breathing organism. I say that based on, and it gets better or worse every day based upon the time and effort that you put into it. And the more effort you put into relationship building and culture building, the better off it's going to be. If you fail to think that that's important, or and because what most people do when they talk about culture is they check a box. Hey, we brought in a speaker, or hey, we did this at the beginning of the year, and all of a sudden our culture is going to be, la-di-da. At the end of the day, that's culture. Man, culture is hard. Culture takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time and effort. And a lot of what JP was talking about can really help leaders out there, can really help people who are building a culture through their organization to be better. And man, yeah, it was just really insightful. Really, really insightful.
Yeah, pretty cool. I'm excited for you guys to hear this one. You're going to love it.
For sure. So before we do get over to JP, we do have some people to thank. First, want to thank GelSticks, GELSTX.com. Go there for a discount on some weighted training sticks by using the coupon code ThinkTank, one word. GelSticks has been with us every step of the way since we started doing advertisements on this podcast. And yeah, guys, and for all of the people that we're talking about right now, we do not do ads for people that we don't believe in. And GelSticks is one that has shown can have results. And Vex uses them in the gym, pro teams, college teams, junior teams. They all use them. And Christmas is right around the corner. Black Friday, all that kind of stuff. So great time to get a GelSticks today. They have hockey sticks, they have lacrosse sticks, they have golf clubs as well. So go there, GELSTX.com, use the coupon code ThinkTank, one word, to get a discount.
Love it. Also, with GelSticks, they're doing like a holiday thing where you can win a raffle, and if you win the raffle, you win a gel stick, and you also win free training from me. So go to GelSticks website. If it's not on there, DM GelSticks and just ask, how do I win that raffle to get Big Daddy Vex's free training? And they'll know what that means. And if they don't, they'll text me and I'll tell them. So also want to say thank you to Train Heroic. Train Heroic is the amazing app, best training app in the world. I am able right now to train 21 teams on this app right now. All right. I'm working with Division 1, Division 3, USHL, NUL, NCDC, youth teams, you name it. I can help. So if there's any coaches out there that are looking for either home programs or at the gym, I can help you for such a hilariously low price per player. Like all of hockey players that are above 13 that are serious should be training. And I think that all athletes, I think all human beings should be learning to move their body and function correctly and taking care of their health. So that's something I can facilitate for a very low price in a super clean manner with Train Heroic. So I just want to say thank you to Train Heroic for creating that app and letting me do that. Also want to say thanks to Cured Nutrition. Cured Nutrition CBD company I'm with. If you have any questions on CBD, do not be afraid to reach out and ask me. I've been taking it since my last year pro in 2017, 2018. I take it 2 to 3 times a day. Absolutely love it. I use a dropper. Sometimes I have the gummies. I also have a nice balm from them too. Like if I ever, get bruised up in the gym, like falling over stuff or being an idiot or something. So if you have any questions on how, what, when, why, where with CBD, please don't be afraid to reach out to me or go to curednutrition.com and use my discount code GMBM.
And also thank you to Helios Hockey, one of the best hockey services that I have ever seen. And what Helios Hockey does is they give you a sensor that you could put into your shoulder pads. And with that sensor, a couple things happen. Number one, it can give you what they call a hustle score, which is awesome for kids. Great competition. Shows you from a data point of view how hard you are hustling out on the ice. Also, it is very big on helping you to understand your stride length, stride mechanics, and it's awesome with that because it also links with video. And this is unbelievable. Vex and I talk about it every week. It links your sensor up to the video, wherever you're doing your video, whether it's Live Barn, whether it's an iPad, you can link it up there, and it gets your shifts cut for you immediately, instantaneously, right after the game. Boom, you have your shifts. And so our last short shifts episode was all about how you can watch your own video to make you a better hockey player. And Helios Hockey is just a phenomenal product to help you to be able to do that. So go to helioshockey.com, and we have partnered with them. So all Hockey Think Tank listeners get a discount code. Again, Think Tank, one word, and it will give you a new Helios, or it will give new Helios members 20% off their initial 12-month membership. And you will also, with that, get that sensor that you put in your shoulder pads for free. So awesome deal there for Helios Hockey. Go there today. And also want to thank icehockeysystems.com, the best website out there for all your coaching education needs. We have teamed up with Ice Hockey Systems to do an associations platform where you can get this for every single coach within your organization. So you can share drills together, draw drills up, share different practice plans, share different systems and things that you're doing with your teams, and just a great way to collaborate with all of the coaches within your organization. Also, this is for the parents as well, because if you do get the association's platform, you will get access, or your parents will get access to the Hockey Think Tank Parent Survival Guide. So hockey directors out there, if you are listening, guaranteed you will have less angry phone calls from your parents if they read this Parent Survival Guide. So go to icehockeysystems.com today and sign up for that. And also thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you guys so much. We continue to grind this podcast out, and it's hard to say grind this out because we enjoy doing it so much. We're enjoying the grind of doing this every week with you guys. And so if you can, to help us spread the word, if you can, send us reviews and send us ratings on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you can share us with your teams, your organizations, your parent groups, whatever it may be, it just goes a long way for helping us to continue to do our goal, which is to make a positive impact on the youth hockey world and the hockey world at large. So thank you for your support. You guys are going to absolutely love this podcast conversation with culture consultant and executive coach, JP Nerbun. So without further ado, here we go with JP. We are so excited to have on this episode of the podcast across the pond in Ireland, JP Nerbun. JP, how you doing tonight, man?
Hey, it's awesome to be here.
Yeah, and your night's probably going a little bit better than mine right now. Just absolutely frazzled right now as we start this podcast. Internet's going out, microphone's not working, but we're going to battle through this one. You got the professional setup because you got a podcast going there too. And if you can, just as we start, tell us a little bit about the podcast you do, the Coaching Culture. Tell us a little bit how you started that and what you guys talk about.
Yeah, it's been going about 7 years now at this stage. When I started, it was just, like I'm learning a lot about culture. I'm studying it and doing some work with some teams and coaches. And I just wanted to kind of share what I was learning and also have the fortune of like the people that I was learning from, reading their books, studying their work. I was trying to maybe bring them on and ask them to share more and go deeper into it. So got some really unique guests in there. It's not just a bunch of sports people or coaches. It's people that are, experts in behavior change and neuroscience and discipline strategies. I mean, it's very wide ranging. Anything that would relate to culture, we bring people on.
That's awesome. And I can't wait to nerd out with you on culture here today, because I study it. I got my master's in sports studies and everything like that. And there's nothing more important to building team than its culture. And so how did you get interested in it? I know you played basketball in college, won an NIT championship at South Carolina. Was it right around there when you kind of started to realize how important culture was and it kind of piqued your interest?
No, it was a little bit more into my coaching journey, probably more around, I think 5 years. I won't even say probably even, early stages, you recognize its importance, but 10 years into that journey of coaching, I just became really frustrated because it felt like it was a roll of the dice. Like, hey, this year we had a great culture, everything comes together, and the next year it's like, well, this player or that player or these couple parents or different factors come in, and maybe I don't feel like I did the right thing, and just the culture just seems to just not come together, and it just seems to be toxic, or just seems to struggle all year. There's no lack of buy-in, right? You have all these issues. And I got really tired of this whole like rolling the dice. And I was like, man, like there's got to be a way to consistently year in and year in and year out have a strong culture. Like, and you read about certain organizations and teams and coaches that are able to reproduce that. And so that's what really set me on that path. Was I just was frustrated with the inconsistency of my team cultures. And I was learning, I was trying to learn that kind of maybe a proven way of just doing that year in and year out.
I love that. I love that. And for me, culture is it's a living, breathing organism that gets better or worse based upon the effort and time that you put into it and the relationships of the group. And so, as you were doing your deep dive into culture, particularly not necessarily on the studies side, but just you were going through those inconsistencies and stuff. What were you seeing that your teams that you were on, and then now you've studied it, you work with a lot of different teams. Like, what are some of the biggest mistakes that teams are making as they're either building or not building their culture? What are some of the things that you see are maybe holding some teams back from truly developing a healthy, thriving team culture?
Yeah, one is that it's not co-created. Like, it just tries to come from one leader dictating the culture and what he wants, right? So that would be one issue. A lack of intentionality by that leader or the few leaders in there of like, essentially you have this vision, and you have a philosophy, a way of that like a mission as a coach. Maybe you have some vision of what you're trying to create. You have some core values, right? Things like that. So you've got coaches with this great aspirational vision and values, but you don't align that philosophy with a system, right? So like your behaviors, your strategies for building culture, for running their procedures, how you run the team, those things are not aligned with the philosophy. So it's aligning your philosophy with a system, like that's the tools, methods, strategies, and kind of behaviors from you as a coach. So that alignment has to exist, within that. So a lot of times we see people just kind of really at the end of the day, they're reacting. They're so downstream, and this was me as a coach for years. It's just like issues would come up, player doesn't buy in. There's discipline issues, there's those types of things. And I'm just constantly reacting to them. I don't have a system in place that is A, trying to prevent those things. And B, when they do come up, we know how we're going to address those things, loosely. It's not just like a strict procedure, but more we have strategies and tools for addressing those. So getting upstream instead of just being always downstream and just like, oh, here we go, lack of buy-in. Now what do I do? It's like, well, what have we done to create that buy-in, whatever the thing is that you're struggling culturally.
That's so interesting. I was, when you first spoke and you said, you learned it actually in your coaching career early on because you were always reacting. I was going to say, I think a lot of people and a lot of teams, like it's the same thing. Like they live reactively instead of proactively. And it sounds like that's obviously now what you're doing, what he's talking about here with upstream. Like when you proactively get in front of things before they start. Toph talks about this all the time, creating culture with the parents on the team and having an expectation set at the beginning of the year. It's much easier to have that go the way you want it when you do that to start, not let it fester and go crazy until December. And now the parents are, or kids or whoever is going off the wagon. And now you're trying to course correct. It's much easier to course correct in the beginning, which is proactive versus reactive. I love that.
Yeah. And what you're touching on there is probably another issue, which is that culture is very complex. To what Toph was talking about earlier, it's very complex. There's parents, there's athletes. Coaching has become more complex today, right? There are so many different things, mental health of athletes, the social media, parent involvement, just to name a few of the top ones there that have made this a lot more difficult, or I wouldn't say difficult, difficult, but also complex. And so, it used to work where we probably could get a little by culturally a little bit more by just dictating what we wanted and everybody kind of bought in, but that doesn't work anymore, right? If people want to have more autonomy and say within it, which we can see that as a good thing, right? If we can leverage that. But when you're dealing with complexity, you sure as heck can't use just one or two things. Like you can't just have the preseason retreat for the team and one little thing here. Like I think lots of other problems, we look for that silver bullet, or, hey, oh, what did this coach do over at this college? Oh, what did this coach do over here? Oh, that seemed, oh, they went to the championship. Like we should do that. And then we go do that team activity, or we have that mantra and we throw it on our t-shirt and we think that's building culture, when it's like, it's so complex. You have to address the system. How do you do things within your program? How do you recruit? How do you engage the parents? How do you build relationships with players? How do you establish standards, right? How do you help them to build connections amongst each other? Like, there's so many different things you have to get it and to address. And it can seem really difficult to do, but if you start to address the system, you already actually have a system of ways of doing things. You're just tweaking, you're making those changes in how you do things, right? It actually isn't necessarily a lot more work. It's just changing what we're doing.
And it's funny how, like, the more work you do on the front end of establishing those standards and establishing, the way that people are going to treat each other and things like that, probably the less issues you're going to have. And when you have that system, now we have I don't want to say a fail safe, but we have a method of, when things do go wrong, now we have a little bit of a plan on how to deal with some of those things. And when you're dealing with people, expect the unexpected, man. Expect the unexpected. I think that's one thing as a coach, and we've all been coaches. We can have a plan coming into a year, or we can have a plan coming into even a day, and all of a sudden we get to the rink, or we get to the court, or we get to our business, and all of a sudden something gets put on our desk right at the beginning of the day that throws that whole plan out the window. Now we got to figure something else out. And so I love how you were talking about just having systems in place to be able to deal with some of those issues and to be able to build that positive and thriving culture. If you can you just like elaborate a little bit on how to put those systems in place and what types of systems teams can kind of use to have that plan as they're going through their seasons, as they're going through their year, whatever it may be?
Yeah, let me give you kind of a brief overview, and then I'll let you pick where you want to go with this. So when it comes to the framework that I work with my coaches on, and it's also in my book that came out about a year and a half ago called The Culture System. In this framework, there's kind of 4 elements to it. Okay, at the core of this framework is just a leadership philosophy. And that can be expressed in a variety of ways, but having like a mission statement, vision statement, core values. And then also just the key component here too is behaviors that align with that. So if we say we want to make a difference in kids' lives, if we want to create a great experience, are we having behaviors that support that experience and that vision? The way that I show up as a coach every day, right? How do I show up? And so it's making sure we have those behaviors and the disciplines to continuously move towards that type of way of being with our athletes and potentially even their parents. Okay. So at the core of that is that leadership philosophy and way of being, right? So, I call transformational leadership. Outside of that, in my flywheel, we have how we establish the culture, how we support the culture, how we enforce it. Establishing the culture, and culture, as I define it, is the strength of the relationships, right? The connection. And then on my y-axis, that's my x-axis, I always put the standards. How high or how low are those? So we want high standards and we want strong relationships. And we know that both coexist. You really can't have one without the other, right? If you have good relationships, you hold people accountable. If you have high standards, you have relationships, right? So that those coexist. So how do we establish the cultures? How do we establish relationships and those connections, right? So there's ways of doing that are, having some non-negotiables as a coach, a few standards across your program, co-creating standards as a team. There's what we do, player development plans, where our coaches meet with each individual to kind of set some individual standards, individual goals for that athlete. We have a leadership council system, which is a system of that really works with the team to develop leaders, right, and decentralize command throughout the team, giving them real opportunities to lead. So that's how we establish it. And then how we support it is through continuously having conversations with our athletes, those one-on-ones throughout the season. It's through organizing different team events to create space for them to actually come together and to connect. It's through different supportive strategies. It's not just about setting the standard and then holding the individuals accountable. It's we want to be able to come in there and support the behavioral type of change, not just be the accountability police. We want to support them in holding each other accountable. So there's a variety of support strategies, and the enforce strategies is largely built on reinforcing what we do like, what we, celebrating those behaviors. But then we also have a real approach towards discipline That's founded in some of the work from Dr. Jane Nelson and positive discipline, as well as some of Dr. Bruce Perry's work on neuroscience. Right? What is effective ways of disciplining? We talk about logical consequences, natural consequences, restorative consequences, things that are more solution-based rather than fear-based types of discipline. So that's kind of an overview. You have at the center of it, you have this leadership approach. And then outside of that, you establish, support, and enforce. And you're always doing that, right? It's not just a one step, two step, three. You're always having to come back and really, reestablish your standards, so come in and support those relationships and those standards and then enforce them.
It's so true. And I feel like a lot of just been around a lot of different teams doing this culture thing too. And I feel like people see culture as like a box to check, where it's like, hey, we got to do our team building thing or our camping trip or whatever at the beginning of the year. And then it's like, oh, we did our culture stuff. We should be all set. At the end of the day, I totally agree with you. Like, it's an everyday thing. Culture is an everyday thing. And for me, I feel like one of the things that you touched on, I want to dive a little bit deeper into, and that's accountability within the group and the support within the group. And when I do my team building, particularly with like the older teams that I do it with, the most impactful part of what I do is when we talk about player to player accountability and how it's much more impactful when the room is policed by the team and not by the coaches, and setting standards with that. Can you talk a little bit about how you work with teams on trying to establish that culture within the room where people feel empowered to, be the leaders, and the coach doesn't have to always be the one that's, and I love what you said there. It's not just holding people accountable, but it's supporting people too. Can you talk about how you foster that environment within a team?
Yeah, we'll touch on, it comes out to three phases or elements there. So first off, when we establish standards, we also establish accountability measures, right? So we agree to these things. These are good, working hard, showing up on time, right? All these things that a team would naturally come up with that they would need to do to be successful and to have a great experience, right? When you set that, then you also need to say, okay, well, how do we support each other in that? So if your teammates not mean that, like, what are ways that we can support each other? How do you want your teammates to step in, and how do you want us as coaches to support you and hold you accountable? So you have a conversation. Often the times the coaches that I work with, they present, hey, well, listen, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to scream at you. I'm not going to make you run, use physical conditioning. I'm going to use these types of consequences and the reasons why, right? And we could talk about those if you want. But so you essentially, you create this, do you agree to this? And then once you've agreed to this level of support and accountability, now, right, the system continuously comes back to enforcing that. And it does it in a variety of ways. A few of those ways, outside of the coach disciplining and holding the athletes accountable, comes down to the leadership council, right? So if I'm meeting with my leadership council on a weekly basis, they actually typically are looking after 3 or 4 individuals on the team. So you might have 4 or 5 guys on your team. For a hockey team, right? So you have 5 guys. They might have 5 groups of 4. And so if an individual is showing up late, or if an individual is struggling with their effort or their attitude, or a lot of penalties, stuff like that in a game, you might work with that leader and say, hey, what can you do to support them? And so that person might be, hey, they're giving them the wake up call. They're helping them get to practice on time. They're the one that's, pulling them aside in emotional moments, but you work with them to essentially develop them as leaders to be able to hold each other accountable. It's a little bit, I think, can you get there? Yes, but it's better to start with, hey, here's 4 or 5 individuals. I'm going to work with them to be able to hold each other accountable because they have status and influence that has been determined by the team. And so I'm working to develop them to hold others accountable. Rather than try to say, let's get all 20 guys in the team to hold each other accountable. It just really is very difficult to get to that point. But you're better off with 4 or 5 elected people to that leadership council doing that. Another way that we do train teams to all hold each other accountable and support each other is by using this, what we call EARN, which is around effective communication strategies to support behavioral change. So EARN stands for encourage. So we start by, hey, we're just encouraging the type of right behaviors from each other and effort, attitude. Affirmation, beyond praise, we're giving specific feedback to each other here in this team. This is for coaches and players. Not praise, but affirmations around the behavior. Hey, a nice job of this. What are they specifically doing? So we encourage, we affirm, we remind as our R. Hey, remember to do this, right? So remember here, remember that. So just before that moment, right, we're giving them that information, that reminder. And lastly is a notification. It's just an observation. It's non-judgmental. It's just, hey man, I saw you did this. And that doesn't seem like it's in line with our standards, right? Or, hey, I just noticed that. It's not, hey, you're being lazy, or hey, you're being selfish. It's, I just saw this, right? You weren't skating hard. And it's just pointing that out and shining a light on that. And so we work with athletes to teach them and train that and do role playing and different things. We do that within drills. It's not even like necessarily in a classroom. It's just like, hey, we're going to really focus right now on reminders. What are the things we need to be reminding right now? So it's just kind of just training that even within the practice, how to communicate like that.
That's great. And it, like what you said there, what was the N word again?
Notifications.
Notification. And I think like what you were saying there, I feel like it's really hard for leaders on a team to hold people accountable and be held accountable too, because I feel like when it's with your teammates, people take it very personally. It's almost like a personal slight, and just having the ability to say, hey, like this was the behavior, this is the potential accountability structure that we have to it. It's not, I'm not getting into you right now in my own way. And I don't mean like being hard as in yelling at you, but like, I'm just reminding you, like you said, these are our standards. And it's not personal, man. Like, I'm just trying to help you. I'm just trying to help you be a thriving part of this team. This is the standards that we set, and here we got to go from there. So, like, I don't know if that's something that you've seen, in the time that you've been around, particularly the athletes, but I'm sure it's with everybody. It's just like, I feel like when coworkers or teammates are holding each other accountable, it's difficult because everybody takes it very personally.
Yeah, and what you're trying to do is when you establish standards, you're trying to establish like these agreements, these permissions to give each other feedback to hold each other accountable. And so, one of the things I've noticed was like coaches struggle sometimes to hold individuals accountable, to have difficult conversations, right? They struggle to do it with each other, with other assistant coaches, with athletes. And so oftentimes what I felt like was I was working with coaches and we were trying to design different scripts for them. Just, hey, you struggle in those moments. So we often had these scripts that coaches would, they would use within their own personality and but they had these key points around how we give effective feedback or lean in. And like, just like you said, hey man, I noticed this, right? I know that's not in line with our standards, right? What do you think? Right. So just ways of just shining a light on behavior. Well, we then recognize, well, athletes also need this. So this is really was powerful was just, we've had teams actually create like a template. And this was much inspired by the work of the 2007 Rugby World Cup winning teams in South Africa, when they were struggling with player-to-player feedback, because they created a template. And it just said simply, hey, man, I noticed this. I could be wrong. Seems below our standard. Just trying to help you grow. Just like it was just a simple template. And obviously they didn't always say it like that, but it's like, oh, this is how we have these conversations, right? So just giving some sort of template was just a cool way. And it's something that helps people sometimes get over that hump, because it's like, hey, we have permissions, and then here's how we know we're stepping into that conversation.
For me, it's massively important at the beginning of the season or year or whatever meeting that you need to talk about that and establish why you're going to be doing that, and tell the players and the coaches and everything, like, this feedback, like, who wants to win a championship? Raise your hand. Every guy's hand's going up in the room on the team. Doesn't matter what league or what level. Okay, well, here's one way we're going to do it that nobody else does. Have you guys ever done this before? Obviously the answer is no. Nobody does that stuff, right? And so you're getting them to buy in. Oh, I've never done that. I haven't won a championship. Okay. And then you say, so this is why we're going to do this. This isn't to chirp guys. This isn't, to be mean. This is so we win the championship that you all just said you want to win. This is one of the ways we get there, by holding our standard and holding each other accountable. You guys want to win a championship still? You in for that? They raise their hand again. They're already bought in. So now when it starts happening, because you lived proactively to start, there's not that reactive component. Oh, don't come at me, like, why are you correcting me? Like, okay, you know what? You're right. It's just, if you do things up front to set all of that up, it helps everything down the line after it.
Yeah, I think so often this is where I got. I mean, man, for years I did the activity where we sat down and we created standards as a team, and then I got frustrated because I'm like, well, the guys do. We say that we're going to do these things, but we don't follow them. Like we don't follow the standards. It's like, yeah, that's like human behavior. Like we all say we're going to do something, we don't friggin' follow through on it, right? Our role is to come in there and support, and then to hold them accountable. So we're getting that permissions, but we got to come back in. As you really had a great recommendation there for coaches, which is you've got to constantly be pointing back to the standards. Hey, man. Hey, guys, remember what we said at the beginning of the year, right? So it's just that moment of practice when a guy's not working hard. It's just like pulling the guy aside or just saying, hey, you're not meeting the standard we've set. Step off. When you're ready to come back and meet the standard, give me a thumbs up and we'll get you back in there. But it's just constantly pointing back to, hey, we said we were going to do these things because that's what we need to do to be successful. And it's when we point that out, we start to tap into more intrinsic motivation. So often we rely on those extrinsic motivators of, yelling at them, screaming at them, making them run, do all this conditioning. And sure, I know a lot of coaches are going, well, that's effective. Yeah, in the short term, but why are they doing it? Why do they start working hard? Because you said so. Because they're afraid of what's going to happen if they don't. And I would say to all coaches here, do you want your players to work hard, have a good attitude, and show up and treat each other with respect and you with respect because it's what you said and because if they didn't, they were going to get in trouble? Or do you want them to do it because that's actually who they want to be as an athlete, as a person, and because that's what they know is going to help them to be successful? I say every coach is going to say the latter, especially if you're in that line of transformational coaching. Like we want lasting change. And so what we do is we just step in and we just remind people of what they agreed to and the reasons they agreed to it, right? Because it's going to lead to the success that we want. And so thus, this is the biggest difference between punishment and consequences, which I advocate more. Punishment is I'm doing this to you, right? It's all coming from me. And consequences are, hey, you've got a choice and you choose this, you have these types of consequences. And it's just more on the athlete and pretty more ownership and autonomy of their decisions and the what those results are.
I think I'm going to take some of this with my 6-year-old too tonight. I'm going to go back to the standards we set in the household and teach my little Paigey about maybe being a little bit kinder and things like that. I think works for parenting too.
Can I just jump in on that? But this is really important because what has happened in coaching is we have not evolved in so many of the times the ways that we're disciplining, right? And what we've had is we have a culture of high accountability where the coach would come in and just, and obviously that's not as effective anymore, especially in the short term. It's becoming less and less effective. But also, there's a promotion for safe sport and all these good things, right? Of creating a healthy environment for the athlete. But yet there's been sometimes this pendulum swing, right? I knew I did not want to be that yeller screamer type of coach, but all of a sudden I shift to the point where I'm permissive. And I don't hold athletes accountable at all. And what we do is we need to be kind and firm. We need to hold athletes accountable. And so you talk about parenting, it's just like, well, there's effective strategies that are based in science and research around the brain and human behavior that have been used in parenting and in the classroom that we just have kind of ignored in coaching for decades. And so that's what we're trying to bring is some of that research into coaching.
Are there any like specific studies from a research standpoint that you've come across as some of like the standard setting things that we're talking about that really can hammer home? Because some people just like data, right? They're like, okay, that's cool, that sounds really good, but tell me that it's worked from an educational data standpoint too. Are there any studies that you can think of that have talked about these things that we're talking about right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I go extensively into them within my book, where we've just had different school systems that have approached this stuff from more of, and actually one story I tell in the book is just around how one community transformed their court system. So they went to a kind of a community court system, and this has been replicated all throughout the world. This was in one of the worst, most violent crime ridden communities back in the early 2000s, and I believe it was Red Hook community up in kind of in New York. And what they ended up doing was they took their whole court system and they transformed it. So all of a sudden, like, it's not the normal court feel when people walk in. Like, there's pictures of smiling people and families and stuff. There's a lot of color in the building. You come into the courtroom. The judge is not high up. He's right down here with you. He's smiling. He's laughing. He makes jokes. And it's all restorative based. It's like, hey, there was this problem. You did this. What was causing that? Let's address that. And so they end up reducing sentences, all those types of things, and just focusing more on like community service, creating different structures in that person's life. So they're really addressing the underlying issue, and they saw a massive reduction in second and repeat offenders, something like, over 50%. But just so stories like that, I think, where we've seen it in play, some of the work that Dr. Jay Nelson has done within schools and education systems to bring in logical consequences. And obviously just in my own family, I worked with me and my wife. You talk about that. We've got 3 small kids. We had, that moment, like a lot of parents probably during the pandemic, were like, oh my gosh, how many more times am I going to end up yelling at my kid when I don't want to yell at them? So we just got a coach from Positive Discipline to work with. And so some of that is based in some psychology, and I'm going to mispronounce his name. I think it's Alfred Alders, but I might be mispronouncing the
We'll go with
psychologist's
Alfie.
name.
We'll call him Alfie.
Yeah, we'll go with Alfie, right? So yeah, so there's a lot of research there as well too. So we that I share in there, whether it's a court system, school system, or even just what we're seeing in within some of the family approaches that are effective long term.
Well, let me ask you this, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot. And I feel like a lot of problems could be, I don't want to say solved, but we can have a much broader perspective on some of these issues when we see each other as human beings rather than like titles. So like, I'm the dad and you're the kid. I'm the coach and you're the player. I'm the boss and you're the employee. And when we can do things to humanize each other, I just feel like some of that accountability and some of that just like, even the hard conversations, it's so much easier to have those things when we see each other as just freaking human beings at the end of the day. And like you mentioned that courtroom analogy, and how that went, like for me, the thing that instantly went into my head is like, yeah, you're just seeing each other as people. I'm not the judge and you're the convict or the lawyer. Like we're people, and let's treat as people. And at the end of the day, like I feel like culture in anything, it goes by how we treat each other at the end of the day. And so I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I've been talking about that a lot, and I've been really just thinking about that. Like we're all people, man. Like we're all people. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. We all have things that we do well. We all have things that we don't do well. We all come from different backgrounds, we all have different stories. And the more that we can understand each other and things like that, it goes so much further to just creating a closeness. And if you're talking about a team, creating a buy-in when people see each other for who they really are and their authentic selves, rather than just like teammate or coach or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, totally 100% resonate with that. In fact, the very first chapter of my book, The Culture System, the whole system is based on the leader having what we call an outward mindset, which is to see people as people. It's literally what it says. Our mindset, see people as people.
I love
so
that.
often we see people as obstacles, vehicles, or irrelevant. So the athlete is an obstacle because he doesn't work hard. He doesn't have a good attitude. He's a vehicle. Oh, he's so talented. He does exactly everything I tell him to do, right? He's going to help take this team further, right? So we just see him as something to help further my agenda. Or we see him as irrelevant. He's the third, fourth kid in the lineup. It doesn't really matter. So there's that obstacles, vehicles are irrelevant. But when we see people as people, we see their needs, we see their challenges, and we see their aspirations, their needs, challenges, and aspirations as legitimate as our own. And so, I mean, we walk through life, and this is, not just how we approach things as coaches, but we constantly go inward and we focus on, well, my needs, my challenges, my aspirations, they're at the center, right? And so other people are either helping me or they're hurting me in that, just even think about when you get in the car today, right? You're driving somewhere. There's the person that's going slow in front of you while they're slowing you down, and you just go, shake your fist at them. And there's the person that lets you in. Oh, they're nice, like let me into traffic here. And so but we are driving in the car and we don't actually see people on the road. We just see people that are like getting in our way so often. And just me getting to where I got to go is the most important thing in the world. And I don't realize that, well, this person over here, they may actually be in probably a bit of a hurry here, or they might be going to the hospital here, or, like there's so many things we don't see people, we just see objects. And so totally 100% resonated. If we don't see people as people, then it all kind of falls apart. We'll always lack true curiosity, and we'll come in there and we'll be way more judgmental. Back to the whole Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental in these moments. Like, so when an athlete is struggling to do the right thing, to have the right attitude, to show up on time, so often we just come with judgment and saying like, hey, what's going on here? Like what's making this a problem for the team, but also what's getting in the way of this athlete doing what we know they probably want to do. Like no athlete wants to be a jerk. No athlete wants to show up late. There's something getting in the way. And so as our work as a coach can be, hey, what's getting in the way of you doing something that you said you wanted to do and you agreed to?
I love that. I love that so much. And everybody's got a story, right? Like everybody's got a story, and there's a way that we act that we do. And that goes back a lot of different years and from a lot of different influences. One of the most impactful activities that I've done, and we did it a long time ago. There was a leadership consultant that came in that worked with our team when I was a graduate assistant coach at Miami of Ohio. It was called family mapping. And so you basically, through exercises, talk about your family's history and who has influenced you and what their influences were and where they came from. And it basically just gives you a snapshot of the story of who you are and how you became to be who you are. And I love the iceberg analogy, and I use this a lot too in my team building, where you see the tip of the iceberg that's coming out of the water, but then 80 to 90% of the iceberg is underneath the water, and you don't see that. And so we just see people in that tip of the iceberg based on how they're acting, but there's years and years and years of influences and personal experiences and things like that make us who we are and get us to act in the way that we do. And the more that we can buy into really learning who each other are and what our stories are, I feel like that just creates a closeness within the group, because we understand each other and we understand each other's faults, and we understand why we do certain things, for the good and for the bad and for the ugly. And I think we have a little bit more empathy for people the more that we get to know each other. And so I totally agree with you. And I love what you're saying there. Just like, the more we can humanize it, the more we can have systems to be able to create some of these relationships, so we do get to know each other on a deeper level. It just goes such a long way to building that camaraderie, building that love. And one of the things that I do when I go and I work with teams is I ask them, and JP, this will probably resonate with you as a coach. Like, I'll ask the guys in the locker room, like, who in here has ever won a championship? And then, let's say half of the team raises their hands. And then the next question I ask them is, say, okay, whoever, for all you guys that have your hands up right now, keep your hands up if that was the closest team you've ever been on. And very few hands ever go down, if any hands go down. And there's a very direct relationship, correlation, causation, whatever you want to say, between how tight-knit a group is and their productivity with what they're doing. And so,
amen.
Thanks, Stud Muffin.
Can I get an amen?
So JP, like, as we're talking about these kinds of things, how can we create some of that bond? How can we create some of that love? How can we create some of that just togetherness that is so important to building a healthy, thriving culture as we're going through the day-to-day and the ups and downs and just the craziness that comes with the season?
Yeah. Questions. Use questions. And obviously there's activities like the hero highlight hardship and hope that you can have your teammates, the players do, rotating a player throughout the year, before every day before game day, one athlete gets up, shares a hero, of his, a highlight from his life, a hardship that he's faced, or a hope for the future, right? Stuff like that. But we actually try to do it a little bit more simple and just consistent over time. And this could be by giving them a question every day before practice and doing that in their circles, in groups or in pairs. We do it like on partner walks, partner skates around the ice, whatever. Just having a quick conversation. Here's a question, giving them an interesting question. It could be, what's an embarrassing moment from your life, or what's something difficult that you've overcome. It can be kind of deep, and also can be something. Sometimes they're a silly question. Like one of my favorites one is like, what's, if you could have one song play every time you walk into a room, what would that song be? Right? It's just something really silly and fun. That
What's your song?
like, what's my song?
What's your song? You got to know it. If you're asking people, you got to have one.
Hell's Bells, man.
Oh, yeah, there you go. A little AC/DC.
You know what's hilarious? The boys rip on me because anytime I'm really excited before every training session, after my guys do some hand-eye coordination, they lay down on their mats, and there's like anywhere from 16 to 24 guys in the room, and we're doing visualization and stuff. And as I'm bringing them out of their visualization, I start Hell's Bells and I start the volume low, and it just starts with the boom, and then it starts to come up, and then the get, and I just turn the volume up more and more, and I'm like, let's have a great day, and then we get going. I love that you said Hell's Bells.
Dude, you just sounded like Jack Black from School of Rock right there.
Let's rock.
Today. I like it. Well, JP, I want to go back to something that you were talking about earlier, because this is something that I think teams don't do enough, and that's leadership development. And you talked about empowering a certain potential group of leaders to kind of be the ones who are the stewards of the support and the accountability. And I love that, just kind of like almost as a coach, just really diving in and helping these leaders develop the skills necessary so problems aren't coming to you as a coach potentially, right? So if you can talk a little bit about like a leadership development system and how coaches can empower their leaders and teach their leaders the skills necessary to be able to, lead the team from the front.
Yeah. So I tried it all as a coach because I was like, man, I don't have leaders on my team. Right. And I've come to realize I had influencers, right? They weren't maybe leaders in the way that I wanted them to lead. And so I tried leadership curriculums. I tried having a coach be our designated leadership coach, and, it's really good stuff, right? Good material, book studies, and all those things are really valuable. But what I've come to really understand in research, like from organizations like the Harvard Business Review, that effective leadership development is experiential. It's only done through really leading. Like, you cannot go into a classroom and become a great leader. It just won't happen, right? Like, you can go get your MBA, but you don't really walk out knowing actually how to lead a company. And so what the whole system is based around is giving real experiential learning. So team elects a leader based upon the job description that's created, that it's about serving the team, supporting the team, and connecting the team. Okay. And so you create this job description. The players come up with, hey, what are the qualities we need in a leader? The team elects that leader, and the coach meets with that leader, the leadership group, weekly. The command is decentralized throughout them. So it's typically a 1-to-4, 1-to-5 ratio, because, effective leadership and effective grouping has been shown that 1-to-4, 1-to-5 is a sweet spot. You don't want smaller, and you don't want really much too bigger. It's just really hard to lead and much larger groups like that. So we do that 1-to-4, 1-to-5 ratio. The leadership group comes up with a real commitment to serve, right? They're going to carry the water. They're going to sweep the sheds. They're going to eat last, right? Well, how are we going to show that we're not above you? Are we going to connect the team? Sometimes we're going to organize a team get together once a week or every 2 weeks. Well, sometimes it's going to be, we're going to have a team group chat. We're going to have team breakfast, team lunches. We're going to have one-on-ones with each guy in my unit, in my group. So how am I going to connect, and how am I going to support? And just that coming back to every guy needs different support in different ways. This guy shows up, with this, he struggles with his schoolwork. This guy struggles to show up on time. So you have that weekly meeting that you're constantly checking in on how are we doing on those commitments, as well as what are the issues that are coming up. Coaches bring issues, leaders bring issues, guys in their units send their leadership council guy issues. And so you have a meeting. In each of those weekly meetings, you're talking about the issues around the team, or the locker room's a mess, or people are showing up late, or our attitude, or our effort, or we're struggling with the offense or the system that we're playing here, our systems, guys aren't buying into the system. So, okay, well, now what are some solutions? And you make the athletes be a part of that solution based, approach. They have to start coming up with some solutions, not just on the coach. And then they have to sometimes be responsible for carrying out and executing that. So you have that weekly meeting as well as constant leadership huddles. Hey, before practice, after practice, before games, hey, I'm noticing this, or hey, what are you guys seeing? Or is there anything I should be aware of, or anything I should be concerned about? Hey, I'm thinking we were going to leave tomorrow at 8 a.m. Does that work for people, or do we need, to maybe reconsider that? Like just constantly bringing them into the decision-making process and having these feedback loops where they have the constant pulse of the team, and they're helping you to be aware of that, so that you can better nurture the team. So it's just through those types of things constantly that really give them real decision-making power and having to live with those decisions, right? Of carrying out some sort of solution to maybe some issue the team is facing.
That's awesome. And Vex, I'll ask you this too. Like, I'm really intrigued by this kind of like group mentality. And I forget the exact nomenclature you use there, JP, but like having like a leader in charge of 5 or 6 players, in their group, and almost really getting to know those guys and how they tick and what their issues are, and getting to know them on a deeper level. I feel like that's freaking genius. I feel like that's genius because, again, it's giving a little bit of structure to it, and it's empowering these guys to really focus in on 5 or 6 instead of 2 or 3 captains that have 30 people to look after. Now you have a leadership group of 5 or 6 people. They get their specific, players that they are, I don't want to say in charge of, but that are in their group. Man, like that's.
Well, think about hockey. Think about the application to hockey. 4 lines, like you could have one guy as a group of 5, not a group of 3. You could have one guy who's like the head guy or whatever for the whole line. It would be pretty easy to kind of designate it that way and would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. What have you done? Like, I'm just really intrigued by that, JP, and I've never heard of that before. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that and how you can create that within a group? Just, that group mentality that you were talking about.
Yeah. So we call them units typically. So each leadership council member is responsible for unit. And typically in hockey, we go with leadership council, and then we have captains within that. So you still might have your official captain or two. Other sports, like they use captain's council because the captain isn't necessarily the same level. Like I know that's a bit difficult. Like when coaches introduce this, some people are like, oh wait, we're not going to have the captain anymore. And like, it just becomes a bit of a friction point, but that's just in some of my work with the hockey teams. But with these units, we actually really like to have the players to sit down on the leadership council, those 4 or 5 guys, and say, look at the roster and say, okay, who do you want? Knowing that you have to support this person, you have to connect. It's about we're selecting units to help really break down cliques within our team. So maybe you don't know someone well. That's maybe why you would pick them. Maybe you do know them well, and you know they struggle, and you can actually hold them accountable to that. So initially from the beginning, we want to help them have autonomy to feel ownership of this process. So we really like to have a conversation around who they're going to be in the units. That's one thing, is just bringing them in there. And then, we do a lot of fun things. Sometimes it could be competing. Hey, let's get in your units today. We're going to play a fun game to finish. There could be that. It's getting your units. Let's do a little before action review where we talk about what do we need to focus on to make today's practice effective. You break into units, they have a conversation, they come back together as a team, and then you share quickly what you learned. Or an after action review as a team. It's just post-game reflection. Hey, what do we do well? What's one thing we need to improve on for the next game or for next practice? And so you get into your units. What this does is sometimes we ask questions, and a lot of people don't feel comfortable speaking in a room of 20, and that's okay, right? But we're giving them opportunities to speak up and have a voice through their leadership council guy, and you bring the guys in, and it's just like, okay, hey, what'd you guys talk about? What'd you focus on here? And, one guy might say, well, Johnny over here said, really, he pointed this out, and I think he was right on with that, right? So you're giving everybody a voice, as well as it honestly is a really, really good system to make your life easier. So if you think about it, like you're loading up the bus for a big trip, it's just like you grab your 4 leaders and you go, you and your unit, you're in charge of making sure the locker room's clean. You two you're in charge of making sure the bus is loaded. You're in charge of, at the end of the day, making sure you do a final sweep of the bus so we didn't leave anything and the bus is clean. Like just simple managing like tasks. It becomes this easy way of like you, instead of you having to pull the whole team together, you say, hey, you guys, your unit, you're responsible for cleaning up. And then when it's not, then you pull the leader aside and you don't lecture the whole team. You just go, hey, what happened? Locker room's a mess, man. And it's just like, now he has to go back to his unit and deal with the very difficult task of as a leader of like getting people to do things that they don't want to do. Once again, real experience of just actually having to like do difficult things, which is get other people to do things they don't want to do.
Yeah, that's difficult sometimes. As a parent with 3 kids under 6 right now, I know exactly how that goes pretty well. Well, this is really interesting, JP, but we only have you for a certain amount of time here. So I want to shift gears a little bit because, we are a podcast that a lot of parents listen to. And, specifically they're probably on the car ride with their kids to the rink, or maybe they're at work or whatever it may be. And, you are somebody that has researched and has worked a lot with different parents, and you have a book that you've just written that has a lot to do with that, the Sports Parent Solution. So if you can, I want to have a little bit of a conversation on particularly with parents, because like the way that sports are nowadays, which is the world that we're in, it's become so professionalized at such young of ages. There's this fear of missing out all the time, and we feel like we always need to do more, and it's usually and mostly always with really good intentions. We want to set our kids up to reach their potential and to reach their goals and reach their dreams at the end of the day. But the youth sports industry right now is just kind of nuts. And so if you can talk to us a little bit about maybe some strategies that you have, talk to us a little bit about some kind of advice that you would give parents nowadays in this ever-changing, crazy youth sports system that's been created, on how they can, best help to support their child in their dreams, and also maybe be even a little bit sane as they do it too.
Yeah, my book, the newest one, is kind of a sequel to the culture system. So everything fits back within that. All right. So it's geared really directly to the coach taking a more active role in building a partnership with the parent, right? Because the coach has a bit of responsibility to that. Years ago, I realized that parents weren't necessarily the problem. It was the way that I was looking at parents that were the problem, right? And if I could work with the parents and engage them, then it would be more effective. I always tell the story of Steven Spielberg when he was filming Jaws, and he had the mechanical shark for Jaws. The film was kept breaking, and the film's going over budget and it's going over time, and his career is hanging in the balance because this is like his second big film, and it's like not going well. So he stepped back and he said, what would Alfred Hitchcock do? And he said, Alfred Hitchcock would make a shark movie without a shark. And so that's what he did, is he filmed, if you've seen Jaws, it barely has a shark in the movie, but that's what makes it scary as heck, right? Is this whole like, oh, the shark is underwater, and it totally connects to our experience of being in the ocean. And so, but the problem was not the mechanical shark. The problem was Spielberg's thinking about the problem, what he thought was the problem. So it's the same with parents, right? Parents are just our sharks here. We think that the problem is parents today. It's like, no, actually it's our approach to parents, and we're going to work with parents. And, it's amazing when we start working with parents as coaches, what impact we can have, not just on the athlete and not just on the team culture, but overall, even potentially that parent's life, right? So there's this really amazing moment shortly. I was like 2-3 weeks after I released my book, The Culture System. And in the end of the book, I tell this story about a parent that ran me off the road in his car and got in my face and was just blowing up. Yeah. So I'm literally pulling out of the parking lot out of practice, and he rips his car right in front of me. I have to pull off, get out, and then he just kind of lays into me over a discipline measure with his son, where his son just sat out of practice because he was late. And this had happened plenty of times before, right? If you're late, if we're late without a good reason, we had agreed to the standard that you sit out. Well, the parent rips me, right? And what ends up happening is, the point of the story I tell in the book, The Culture System, is like, dude, like you're going to commit to this system and doing things the right way. And sometimes people are still going to be resistant. Just because you say you value the experience and you value kids doesn't mean that everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, JP, you're a great job, man. We're right behind every decision you make. Right. So there's that part of the story. But the other part of the story is the fact that what we talked about earlier, people are people. And what I learned a few weeks later was 2 weeks prior to this man had, or 3 weeks prior, he had lost his job. A week later, his wife told him to move out, and his son had stopped talking to him. When I talked to his son about the situation, he's like, yeah, I don't even talk to my dad. I said, we haven't talked in weeks. He's a loser. And so here's this man that is just struggling and broken and in one of the lowest moments of his life. I become the target, and it was painful for me, man. Like, that was hard. I thought this guy like was in my corner for 5 years. I coached his son. It was tough. But here's the cool thing about that. Weeks after I released the book, The Culture System, and I tell the story in the book. This dad does not read the book. I know this. He texts me out of the blue. I hadn't heard from him in 5 years. And he just says, hey, Coach Nerbun, I just want to let you know, whenever, I'm talking with friends about my son's sporting experience, I always tell them the best coach my son ever had was Coach Nerbun. He says, the way that you were firm and tough on my son, but loved on him, didn't just help him, but it helped me. It helped me to realize how to be a better father of parenting a teenager. And now I read this. I haven't heard from this guy since then. There's a couple like smaller connections after that moment, but I'm like blown away and actually pretty emotional because I'm like, I never realized my impact actually went to parents. I'm not saying we're going to, every parent's going to model their parenting after our coaching. But here's an example of where someone was, right? They were learning how to like actually hold their son accountable. And so often we go, oh, these parents are the problem. They don't hold their kids accountable. Okay, well, maybe we show them. We show them some different ways there. And just by our own, I wasn't lecturing. I wasn't telling them. I was just showing them, right? I was just showing kind and firm discipline. And their sons resonated with that. Like the kid didn't have a problem staying out of practice. He knew he screwed up. He knew it was his choice. So this just comes down to like recognizing our own example is huge. And there's so many different ways that we do this, from the preseason parent meeting to early one-on-ones, to how we co-create standards around with our parents, to how we set a vision for the team, to how we're constantly bringing them in. We've got coaches that are bringing parents into the locker room after games, right? To celebrate a big win or to mourn a hard loss, right? We've got coaches at the college level that are having parents come in and be a part of a practice, one practice a year. They come in as the parent experience, right? And they get to be a part of a practice and they get to hang out and have food together with other parents. That way they're building connections amongst, with other parents and they're getting to know the other players, because we don't want them just to be focused on their kid, right? We want them to be cheering for the team. Well, how do we do that? Well, we got to make them feel like they're a part of the team. And so if we can bring parents in and actually closer rather than building up the walls, this will absolutely drastically transform the experience for the team, the experience potentially for that athlete, and also the experience for the parent. And you might end up even changing their life.
You and Toph just became best friends doing karate in the garage.
Yeah. A lot of different activities for sure. A lot more room for that. I love that, JP. And like, I've been thinking about this a lot too. And one of the things that I kind of tell coaches when I'm doing my coaches seminars and coaching education stuff with the youth coaches is like, coaching hockey is not just talking about X's and O's. It's building relationships and finding out about the kids. Well, at the end of the day, who knows the most about the kids? It's the parents. It's not you. And I think you're almost crazy by not approaching the parents to find out a little bit about their son or their
100%.
daughter, because again, like 80 to 90% of coaching is just it's relationships. And so I love that. And one of the things, as you were kind of talking, I was getting a little emotional because when I was at Cornell as a player and as a coach, one of the things that Mike Schaefer, our head coach, did was during senior night, he would bring the senior dads in to the locker room before the game when we did the starting lineups, and he would give his little speech before the guys go out. And every year there was tears, and there's been a couple times where players have talked about that was the first time they seen their dad cry, was in that locker room before the game. They were just so unbelievably proud of their sons for going the 4 years at Cornell, and it was just a really touching moment. And that's something that, like, and I know this now as a parent, you don't really know what parenting is until you you are one. And just how difficult and how crazy and how life just changes so much. And I think as coaches, when we can kind of look at parents, again, humanize them. It's not just I'm the coach and you're the parent, but you are a parent that has tried your best and have probably gone through so many different ups and downs with this son or with this daughter. And just, yeah, again, it's all about building relationships. And at the end of the day, like, I so agree with you. I think, you have to have boundaries for sure at the end of the day, but like involving the parents in the coaching of their son or their daughter, I think can go a long way. And then, like you said, just the camaraderie of the group for youth teams. Like, if there ain't a camaraderie between the parents, like, you're probably not going to have a great team experience. And so the more that we can do to facilitate those kinds of things, I just think it goes a long way.
I mean, I think what you said was huge at the end of that too, JP. You're like, not only focusing on their own kid and only rooting for them, but like all the kids. And something that I think, I'm sure it's all youth sports, but I definitely have heard a lot of it in hockey, is parents will get in the car with their kid, and after the game, they're chirping the other players on the team to their son or daughter,
or the coach or the ref
or the coach
anybody.
or the ref, anybody. And it's like, think about that from a psychology standpoint, what that's doing to your child and what that's giving them permission, how that's giving them permission to act the next time they're around that player that you're so much better. Why is he on the power play and you're not? Or it's the coach's fault. Well, now the kid's going to think it's the coach's fault, and they don't need to look inward at maybe where there's some places I could be better. So like for me, that is such a massive one that I think really needs to start being talked about with parents in all sports of all ages.
Yeah. And if you look at, and a lot of coaches are probably saying, well, I don't have time for that, or I shouldn't have to do that. I mean, like, in writing this book, I spoke to Anson Dorrance, 21 national championships at UNC women's soccer. And he's like, man, I'm always like, I owe a debt to these parents. They've helped support these kids' career. I'm going to help them to feel part of the program. I know you've had him on your podcast. I imagine Eric Lang in AIC. I mean, he started recruiting all these international kids, and he's like, I know if I want to bring a lot of international kids into, my team here in the NCAA, like, I need to have relationships with those parents, right? So he values that, and they're proactive. And so often it's like, we're more focused on the conversations we won't have with parents, and we need to actually be communicating, hey, these are the conversations, these are the things that I want to talk about. To your points, guys, like, of just like, they know their kids best. And so if they're struggling with something, or if something's going on at home, like, I want to know these things because I care. And, also to your point there around getting them to cheer for the other kids. I mean, when you take this approach, this will show you what can happen. We had a coach down in New Orleans, high school program, pretty affluent school, but they worked really hard to engage the parents. And I remember doing a parent workshop and, co-created some standards. We had some experience. We had some events. And by the end of the year, the coach found this story where there was, I guess, one of their starters on the team, or maybe he was a first off the bench type of guy, but he was a senior and he would rarely score. But the parents had a tradition of after every game, they'd go out for drinks or for dinner after every game. And they had a deal where the whole parents, right, had this thing where if this kid scored, the dad of that young man, he had to do a shot for every basket he scored. So
awesome.
Here you have, like, this is awesome, right? Like, how often, like, most parents would be embarrassed by that or this, and it's just like, no, like we're all cheering each other on, we're having fun with it. Like, it's just, that shows a connected parent culture, right? Just making something fun like that,
Man, there might have been a couple games there where he was being helped out of the bar then.
He wasn't scoring a lot, man. But there was
I
one
like
game where he scored a lot that I did hear that got a little spicy. So yeah.
Love it. I absolutely love it. Well, JP, thanks so much for taking the time. If you can, tell our listeners a little bit about where they can find you, social media, website, all that kind of stuff. I obviously have a book coming out, so tell us about when that's coming out and things like that. And yeah, because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this that really enjoyed listening to you and would like to know more.
Yeah, the best way to just kind of find all my links is just go to tocculture.com, and I'll obviously send them over to you guys so you can put them in the details there, because I'm on Instagram and Twitter at JP Nerbun. On Instagram, it's I think it's at TOC Culture. But yeah, it's just, you can find me on social media, some of my stuff there. If you like YouTube, you can hop over there and watch our podcast and some other videos that kind of explain some of these things around standards, non-negotiables, discipline strategies. As well as I have a whole online course in addition to the book that just trains. If you want to get your whole club, your whole team, your whole organization, train them on some of these strategies and having a clear coach's philosophy, the course walks every coach through that. So if they want to check that out, that's at tocculture.com as well.
Awesome. And when's the book coming out?
The new one, the Sports Parent Solution, is coming out on November 21st. And so by the time it releases, hopefully it'll be available for pre-order next week. If not, be sure to just check back, but definitely up on November 21st. You get your hands on it.
Awesome. Well, JP, thanks for your time here tonight. This was awesome. Really appreciate your insight, and hopefully we can talk again. And just thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the opportunity to share.